And this is, if you look at all the literature out there in the world, these types of therapies, these repetitive task practice programs, like what we have with the Motus Hand, Motus Foot, are basically the sort of gold standard. These are the best type of evidence we have for individuals with neurologic disorders, such as a stroke.
Hey everyone, my name is Dr. Nick Halsey with Motus Nova. I'm a licensed neurophysical therapist and neuroscientist helping brain injury survivors understand how to make functional gains after their injury. I hope this video helps you in your recovery.
Or something, and some type of medicine and tilt you back, and it's supposed to help reverse the effects the stroke had on your body. So those are the three most recent things I've been doing. So what I'd like to learn and see what you can help me with is, in addition to those things, which I truly feel are combined helping me get better, but I'm looking for a little more speed. And the speed I'm looking for is, I saw your devices and I wanted to know, are they short-term lease type products and a little bit more? I'm having a hard time vision-wise too, so I can't really read everything that I pull up on the internet. But I'd like to know if it's short-term rentals and how it can help my leg and my hand at this point. Create some dedication for myself. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. So thanks for the background. Yeah. So let me give you some quick insight here. So I think when it comes to what the systems are, they're based on a type of therapy called constraint-induced movement therapy. And you may hear this as constraint therapy. You may also hear this as CIMT. These are the types of therapies that are basically called repetitive task practice. And what they do is they encourage you to actually do repetitive motions, as the name implies. And that process of doing repetitive motion is effectively the only way we know at present to build up a neural network. And the way this works is effectively we recapitulate the learning process. And when all of us were very young, first born, we had to learn our motor skills. And when we learned those motor skills, what we did is we had a series of, at least initially, very random and discoordinated motions. And over time, through the process of biofeedback, we learned what was good and what was a bad movement. A great example of this is when you learn to walk for the very first time, when you stand up, you can take a step and you get really immediate feedback, biofeedback in this case, of whether or not the next step you take is good or bad. And what is that biofeedback? It's whether or not you fall or you stay upright. And every single motor task that we learn since then goes to that same process. And this is how we actually learn what series of neurons need to be actually used to generate a purposeful movement. Now that leads to having some networks that are built into our nervous system that we can recruit reliably every single time we want to use them. For instance, whenever I want to pick up a cup of coffee here, I know exactly what I have to do that. I survey my environment, I can feel where my body is in space, and I can execute a motor pattern. But what happens after a stroke is some of those networks are disrupted. And so what we have to do is we have to go through that learning process again to actually build up those networks again. And the way we do this is through, like we did when we were very young, and building these networks de novo from scratch, basically, is go through those motions. And these robotic systems help you do that. These robotic systems help you walk through supervised volitional motions. And this is what actually is able to change our brains. And this is, if you look at all the literature out there in the world, these types of therapies, these repetitive task practice programs, like what we have with the Motus Hand, Motus Foot, are basically the sort of gold standard. These are the best type of evidence we have for individuals with neurologic disorders, such as a stroke. And so the way these things work is they kind of walk you through this process. They give you the biofeedback to train off of. And that's kind of how they work fundamentally. Now, to your question, how they work in a practical sense is, one thing that we acknowledged early on is that we don't know how long someone's going to need a device because every stroke is different.
Hey, if you're finding this video helpful, please hit like and subscribe to help other brain injury survivors learn how Motus Nova is changing neuro-rehab.
The kind of unique physiology, the unique anatomy that each of us brings to the table is going to dictate the rehab be a little bit different. And so for us, what we did, instead of imposing someone has to buy a system and, maybe they only need it for 3 months or 2 months or whatever it is, we basically do what's called a subscription service. So you can use it for as long as you're getting benefits. And as soon as you stop getting benefits, either you plateau or you graduate. And so far as you don't need it anymore, you return it and then you're done. It's pretty simple. And that's really just a recognition of the fact that we don't know exactly how long someone's going to need something. And we want to give people the flexibility to extract as much value from something like this as possible and stop using it and stop paying for it as soon as there's no more value in it for you guys. And that's really, at least on our end, that's the ethical thing to do, because we don't know. And we can't make an accurate prediction. We can kind of guess, but invariably biology will tell us we're wrong. And so I think it's much more of an ethical thing for us to do, is to let people use it as long as they're getting benefits.
Doctor, I think a couple of points I picked up on I'd like to add is, you talk about when we are young, we grow up to learn how to walk, and we have these things that communicate with our brain to connect. The neurons and the neurological connections have been disrupted, and that disruption needs to be rebuilt. And you said your devices can give you, or words to the effect that the device can help connect you again, but you also said the word until you don't need it anymore or you plateau. And what I'm concerned with, from your knowledge, the neurons and the neurological recovery, can they be healed and put back together for each individual person?
So I think I want to make this distinction here. And I think that the neurons that are destroyed following stroke, in adult humans, those do not come back. There are only a few instances in the adult central nervous system where you actually get what's called neurogenesis, where you get new neurons coming back. There are a couple areas in some of our hippocampal structures where we actually have some neurogenesis, but I'd say that's, of the large fraction of the 86 billion neurons that are there, it's a small subset. And so what we're talking about here is not new neurons necessarily. What we're talking about is an altered path. So if you just take an instance, if you just take a city, what city are you most familiar with, Joe?
The town I'm in, obviously, I think.
Okay, yeah. So if you take a town that you're very familiar with, you kind of envision it and get a map of it in your head. Imagine a car trying to travel from one side of that city to another. In most cases, there's not just one path that a car can take. There might be a standard path that you take from, let's say, for instance, your home to your work. Okay. But now let's say that road gets cut off for a second. Okay. And that road gets destroyed. What has to happen is you need to figure out an alternative strategy to get to work. And there are other paths that can take in most cases. And that's it's a nice analogy here. And what has to happen is we're trying to figure out ways that other neurons in the network can take over the function or share the load, if you will.
I understand.
And so it's a distinction, but it's an important one to make, I think. And so what we're trying to do here is that, yes, in the adult nervous system, there is a big capacity to have what's called functional rewiring. And that's what we're describing here. Functional rewiring is how you find an alternative path or different neurons can kick in.
Do people have different neural paths that can be utilized so that I don't plateau? Like, could the alternative location in my body, is it there? We just got to find it. That's what I'd like to know.
Yeah. And I think let me be very, very clear here. The honest answer is, for any one person, I'm not going to be able to say yes or no.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's, it's a rather unsatisfying answer. And I very much wish that I could give you a more satisfying answer. It's the honest one. And it's because when we start to think about the individual components here, not having looked at any of your scans, not knowing any of your functional anatomy when it comes to the brain connections, we're not going to be able to say. And even hypothetically, even if we had all of those rigorous details, let's call it a DTI or various types of imaging approaches, we would still not be able to say with 100% certainty that there is or there is not a possibility. I'd say when it comes down to it, is if we can drive the system hard enough with a large enough stimulus, the best way to know what the answer to your question is, if you're going to adapt, is we need to drive the system hard enough with a big enough intervention. And if that path is present, we will know because you're responding positively to it.
Yeah, I guess
right?
it's trial and error, right?
Yeah, well, it's like a black box, unfortunately, right? The system's kind of a black box, and we can control the inputs into the black box, and we can see the output out of that black box, which is your performance and your improvement. And if we continue to perturb the black box with more intervention, more therapy, and we're continually seeing improvements in the output, then we can have confidence that there's still some residual capacity to adapt and to respond.
Okay. No,
Yeah, and that's why I think
we don't know till we try.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is why I love robotics, because outside of robotics, we don't have that level of granularity of knowing whether something's working or not. But with robotics, we can kind of use that as a really powerful assay of saying, okay, yeah, Joe's getting better. We know he's getting better. We're talking about
it provides data or results that you can measure.
Precisely.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Precisely. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm very anxious to get healthy again. I'm on the right path. I've lost great amount of weight. My aide is a spectacular person. She's got me at the gym. I'm on all the right paths, but I just want to get a little quicker path.
Yeah. I think, Joe, I think you're certainly doing the right thing, right? You're intervening as early as you can, and you're looking for strategies that can help you amplify your recovery. And so I think, you've asked a lot of really great questions. And what I would encourage you to do is maybe take some time, try to integrate what we've talked about into your thinking, and let us know about, kind of next questions, or, if you or your therapist want to talk with me, I'd be happy to chat again.
Thanks for watching this video. If you have questions or would like to speak with me about how you can make functional gains from home, call or text me at 404-939-3476 or visit motusnova.com/contact.